So where we left off was we really kind of completed the armor, right? We kind of finished up adding a little bit of retopo. Oh, good lord, that's lovely. Um, Anyways, we've kind of finished up uh, the armor and finished doing some retopoing with it. We applied all with our modifiers, right? So when I click on here, we applied all, and we solidified, right? We went to like you could do it in object mode, of course, with the modifier, but face has solidify also if you want to do it to just some faces. And we solidified this. Now at this point, this is dense enough that if you really wanted to keep it like this, that would be okay. But for us, we're looking at this object, and this specific object, if we go into face mode, is only about 1,000 triangles, right? That's just not a lot when we look at it. We can honestly, if we wanted to, apply a subdivision surface modifier to this again. In fact, it's always a good idea to kind of go through and maybe do a little more work to this. So we'll do a little more work to this, and we'll start up kind of the retopo for the body. So what I'm going to do is, remember, you could always delete this in half if you wanted to. It is very feasible to, on your own, just delete half of it, mirror it over the old-fashioned way. But we have been trying to use that auto mirror feature a lot more. So if I go to edit here, right? Now remember, if this is not available, that is because that little V right there is closed up, right? Often by default, you come in here and there's that little V kind of pointing to the left in Outliner, right? You click on that. I'm just losing sight of it here visually because there we go. Sunlight's hitting right on the monitor. So you open that up and it actually brings up these little tabs right here. Tools, of course, is where retopo would be, but edit's also where you kind of have a lot of your modeling tools, including auto mirror, right? Auto mirror is great because you can pick the axis right off the bat. You could have editable and toggle edit on, which I do. Apply mirror you leave off. But clip and cut mirror are already there. So remember what it does is it cuts the mesh in half and mirrors it over. So when I go here to auto mirror, boom, there we go. The only thing you have to be aware of is there might be slight edges off here. So one of the things you can always do is grab those, and if I want, I can just kind of move them in to get them to clip back together, right? Same thing here, right? We can just kind of go to where the line looks a little weird, just move it in a little bit. And then kind of the auto clipping takes care, because clipping's already on. It's one of the options for auto mirror. And you'll notice everything's working great, and we're good to go, right? The only thing you might want to be aware of is that there might be kind of some vertices hanging around here, like that one. So remember, you can always select it and hit delete, vertices. Oop, that's actually really screwing with us there. So let's actually hit delete and dissolve vertices. There we go. Remember, deleting will get rid of it, and so oftentimes it's the connected stuff. So dissolve is, unless you're getting rid of an actual polygon, dissolve is usually what you want. Unless it's like a floating vert that's not connected to anything. So now we've got our, there's one there. Dissolve vertices. There we go. So now we've got our mirror set up and everything's looking pretty good there. Maybe double check that this one's all clipped up together. There we go. All right. So it looks like we're good there. Maybe double check to see if there's any weird verts floating around. It doesn't look like it. Remember, Alt-X, of course, is your quick key for X-ray mode, but it is a button right there. And I know we've talked about that plenty of times. So there we go. We've got our mirror set up. Usually you won't have that issue there, but sometimes because of the retopologizing, it might have some of the center edge loop wasn't exactly perfectly lined up. So usually auto mirror handles that perfectly, but occasionally you might have to do a little bit of fixing if you had some edge loops that weren't exactly flattened to the zero. But you see with clipping, it's quite easy to fix. So now we've got our mirror, and of course I can go to modifier and I can add a subdivision surface. Turn on our triangle, and there we go. And the cool thing is that this is not really going to be a terribly dense mesh after that, and it's going to give us that nice extra bit of roundness we want. If need be, remember, you can always trim this down just a little bit, right? If you know that you're going to subdivide it, you can always go back in here and say 2 for edge mode. And I could double left click to select that edge loop. Actually, I think probably better to start the year. Double click, shift double click, and then maybe control delete, right? That's my quick key I've set up for deleting edge loops. But it is just dissolve edges, right? So keep in mind that you might if you're going to apply a subdivision surface algorithm to it, you might go in here and say, hey, you know what? I could probably take out one or two of these just to keep it a little bit more efficient, right? So it's not radically altering the shape, but it will keep your model a bit more efficient polygonally. But it's up to you on how efficient you're trying to be. I figured just a great reminder to show you how easy it actually is to say, hey, I don't need all those edge loops. Dissolving edges, right? Delete, dissolve edges. I've assigned control delete to it, just like Maya for the same thing. Work great, and it just makes our model a little bit more efficient there. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to come in here and I wanted to kind of add a little bit of ridging to some of this. So of course I can go Q and toggle through till I get circle select, right? And remember, circle select can be great at just easily, so go to 3 for face mode. Circle select is great for dragging. So you see how if I just hold down shift, I can add. And what I can easily do, control subtract, is you see how we can easily just kind of drag select these. Now, of course, we have our select in between, of course, as well. And you can, of course, make your brush size smaller. There is a size of the brush. Let's make sure I didn't get anything else in a weird spot. Oh, looks good. In this case, maybe add a little bit more here. There we go. And of course, remember, select between is always there, and I actually, shortest path, I should say, but it's called select between in other packages, same thing. That's actually great and useful, so don't feel like you can't take advantage of that, but you don't always have to use it, right? So remember, one of the things that you could do with Blender is the normal extrusion is set to do regular extrude, and you move it with the direction you want, right? So if I hit Control E to extrude, you see how we could middle mouse to just view move it, right? But that's a little bit weird. It's not exactly giving us what we want. We could grab the yellow handle because that's going to extrude along the average normal. So it's going to kind of find the middle normal, right? And you can kind of see it's roughly lined up with the direction it's going to go, right? But you see how those don't quite go out the way they're supposed to. So not really the best options there for us. Now, remember, if you hold down left mouse button on the extrude tool, it'll bring up all the options. You have extrude manifold, which gives you SketchUp kind of functionality, which is kind of cool. You can extrude individual polygons, right? So they'll extrude all out on their own, right? But you'll see that there is extrude along normals. You can even extrude to cursor. I found it's a little wonky, so I go back to extrude region because here's the thing. I like that being my default there. You can always right-click, right? You right-click, and you're in face mode. It brings up your face context menu. And you'll notice that there is extrude face along normals and extrude individual faces right there. So we extrude face along normals, and we just move our cursor up or down. But you'll notice the difference here is that each face moves along its own independent normal direction, right? Remember, normal direction, it's been one of our vocab words a couple times throughout the year, is the direction your polygon is facing. And so normal direction isn't average normal direction. That's kind of like the middle at the normal, right? It picks like a middle. Which can sometimes be quite useful. Not in this case. In this case, I really wanted each polygon to move along its own direction. So you see when we bring those out, you see how those it just extrudes a lot more evenly. So extrude along normals can be really, 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 really cool, right? Gives us that nice little bit of ridging there. Now, what I wanted to do is I also wanted to do an inset on this, right? It's a vocab word for that. Inset. I. Now, I'm going to extrude first just to show you if I extrude and try to scale what will happen. So I'm going to hit Control E for extrusion, middle mouse button. Well, in this case, maybe just pull it out a little bit there. And I can turn scale on. Now, if I just use default scale, it does that. That's not really great. Now, of course, I can go up here and I could change it to individual origins and see if that'll work better. Nope. Individual origins is awesome. It's not going to give what you want there, though. So you can see that there's no real great option for kind of thinning this a little bit with the regular extrusion tool. So if I hit Inset, I for Inset, and I middle mouse click drag, you see how it basically does an extrusion. It creates new geometry there, but you see how it actually scales each one independent, keeping kind of that ridge, kind of the same thinness. You notice it does do that. So what you do is you go to Inset Face Options, right? And you could turn off boundary, and that'll sew those up properly. And you can even control kind of which direction it's going to go, if it offsets even, which is a good default to have. So there really is a distinctly different behavior that inset has versus extrusion, right? It's creating the same kind of geometry, right? It's creating new geometry with this ridge around here, but it has a very distinct and useful scale behavior right here, right? Because it's kind of scaling relative to each polygon in that area. It's kind of like extrude along normals, but for scaling, right? So inset really does have its own really cool, distinct use. It's quite a useful tool, actually. There's some version of it all packages. Some of you guys remember when we would do Extrude Maya, one of the options that would pop up was its inset, right? This is that same option. It's just that it's its own tool. So there we go. And then maybe I wanted to be a little sharper in here, so I could do Alt-C for loop cut. And we just put that edge loop in there. Oop. Come on. There we go. What is going on there? What are you doing? I don't have snap, I don't have shrink wrap on. What is going on there? It's being a little weird. Alright, let's get out of there and try this one more time. Come on, loop cut, you can do it. Alright. Blender's behaving itself a bit weird here right now. That is bizarre. Loop cut should work fine. Let's see here. What is going on there? Okay. Clearly we're having a bit of an issue here with loop cutting that. Alright, let's not worry about that for the moment then. That's weird. I don't know why that's doing that. Alright. I'll come back and take a look at that later on. That was just going to give us a little more softness there. We could always use an inset somewhere else. That was a bit weird. That should not have been doing that. Alright. Let me double check to see if there's something going on with the subdivision. No? There's really no reason I shouldn't be doing that. Okay. You were just being weird. Okay. Acting a bit weird today, are we? Alright. There should be enough space to get a loop cut in there, but weird. But I really want to just explore extrude along normals and inset with you more than anything, right? That was kind of the big thing there, to kind of show off a bit. And that just gives us a little more with the armor, which is cool, right? We go back out to object mode, and we can see that ultimately the count for this is going to be a bit higher because we're in subdivision surface mode. But honestly, this guy, when he's done, is really going to still be under 20,000. So in this case, it's okay to apply a subdivision because we're going to apply it later on. It's going to give us this nice little roundness. We can always take some extra edge loops in if we need to as well. But let's start to explore the retopoing for this guy right here, because that's kind of an important phase we're in. So let me save that. So I'm going to go click on this body, and what I want to do now, this video is going to be horrible because it keeps getting interrupted by dumb stuff like that. Thank you, computer. So yeah, so what I want to do is I want to turn off these because I don't really want those in the way for the moment. So remember, you just go to Outliner, you just turn the eyeballs off. And what I want to do is I want to copy this. Now, if you go to quad body and you right click on it, you can copy and paste. In fact, you'll see there's Control-C, Control-V for that. So Control-V for paste, and you'll now see that there's another quad body. Now I'll make sure it's kind of in this collection as well. And there we go. Now, what I like to do with this other quad body, and I'm going to turn the visibility off the other one, make sure that's selected. I'm going to turn it down to its lowest level, right? So we're going to go, and we're going to turn sculpt down to 1. Now remember, if you open up the shape area, there is apply base. So any shaping you did at the higher level will be applied to it. And there we go. Now at this point, what I really want to start to do is I'm going to delete half of this because it's just going to be easier to set up our retopo with it as half. So I'm going to go to 3 for face mode. Let's go back to my tweak tool, Q, to toggle through there. And remember, what I can do is I can just double left click on a face close to an edge, because that'll kind of determine the face loop, right? And then, of course, I can do delete. Shift delete is what I have for faces, but I like to just remind you guys about delete. Of course, you can do select linked, right? Remember, that isn't select here, linked. Right bracket is the default quick key, but I changed it to spacebar. And, of course, shift delete, because that's what I've got faces set to. And what we could now do is figure out the areas that we don't want to keep, right? We like the radial pattern. We like those. It's this area that looks ugly, and it's this area that looks ugly. So what we're going to do is we're going to just hit Q to toggle back to our circle select. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and start to say, hey, there's some areas in here that I don't really want to keep. We're going to end up rebuilding this part of the mesh, right? So we keep the parts that we like. Kind of like those two, we'll keep those. And what we do is we go in and we rebuild the section that we don't like, right? So once again, you see circle select can be great and useful because we can go in here and shift will add, control subtract. Actually, I do want those. Probably go to about here. Maybe keep that one. You know what? I think I'll take those out too. There we go. So remember, Q just toggle me through the circle select. And I feel like maybe those guys as well. And of course, what I could do is I could shift delete, right? Or just delete because I want to delete faces. And now we've taken care of getting rid of that part. Now we also see that there is kind of an area up here that's not going to work for us. So what we could do is we could actually go in here and start to take out some of this section. Oh, let's not do that. There we go. So what we could do is we could take out some of this selection, because this is also where we kind of want to rebuild those, right? That should be good enough. We could always take out a little more later on. So remember, delete faces. And you can see what we're doing is we're trying to find the few areas that we want to rebuild some edge loops. And remember, there was kind of a little bit down here as well. And so this is kind of the power of this trick I'm showing you guys, is that we don't have to rely on manual automated retopology. We can actually use some manual to rebuild these things. That does mean, though, that you want to kind of delete out some of the trouble areas. But you notice how most of this body is still available for us? So that's one of the key tricks to this, is that we already have a lot of our edge loops. So we can spend a lot less time trying to manually retopo everything and just retopo the sections we want to. So this kind of gives us a good start. If I need to, I can always go back and take out a few more later on. So I'm going to go to 4 for object mode, and I'm going to bring back body. And I'm going to turn body on, because what I want to do here, and we could always do it for this one as well, but I usually get that set up, and then I'm going to start to draw in some basic starting points in these areas. So I'm actually going to go back to this body, and I'm going to go to Tools, and I'm going to go to Start Retopo. That, of course, is going to create a retopo mesh for us, right? And I'm going to go over here and just kind of turn on the tweak tool properly. We'll delete that vertex later on. Remember, you'll see here's all your mirror modifiers. So I like changing to near surface point and on surface. I'll also move this into our collection up here. So you can just drag and drop those. And I'm going to turn off snap, right? Sometimes I'll use snap to faces, sometimes I won't. And now I can just hit D, because that'll take us to the Annotate tool. And what I could start to do in here is I could, of course, start to draw in the main kind of ridge forms here we want, right? So remember, you kind of draw in the same direction. And that will give us a starting point, right? So I could do add B surface. There we go. Now remember, I turned hidden wire off. We can recalculate normals. There we go. And then I can go in here and I could say, hey, I want to, let's click that off. Q to turn that off. And I'm going to actually go in here to select one for vertices. I'm going to select that vertex. What the heck did I? Actually, that's my annotate curve. But there is that other vertex here that I don't like, so I'll just grab that. Delete vertices. Back to my annotate brush. That's actually probably an annotation curve I actually drew in there, so I'll just switch. Remember, D toggles you through your annotate brushes. The red one is delete. And now we're back, and what I could do is I could just left click, drag, draw these. Now, if you wanted to have a little more distinct control, I will actually sometimes come in here and do this, where I'll draw actually my loops this way, right? We do want them to follow the edge loop contours, and you see I'm kind of drawing them all the same direction, kind of in order. That matters. But I find sometimes that this actually more reliably gets a more complicated and dynamic loop form. And then I could add B-surface. Now remember, if you go to the add B-surface options, you can actually change how many edge loops go across the cross section. Probably want 3 there. And we can even have how many follow. It's probably a little too much. So once you kind of understand how that B-surface stuff works, you see how you can start to get some kind of cool starting points in. I can even go down here, and this one will be easy enough like that one to just kind of do a quick like draw in like this. But you see how we're kind of drawing them from the same direction. We're kind of drawing them in the order. Add B-surface. And then, of course, I could recalculate normals. And now you see we have a start, right? Now I can hit Q to go back to my tweak tool if I want to. And I can go in here and say, hey, that vertex needs to be moved up here a bit more, right? That vertex needs to be moved there a little bit more. Clipping is and can be turned on for that, so I can easily go back in here and just go to 2. And if I want, I can bring that out, maybe Control-E for extrusion, middle mouse button, then those will clip together. And you can start to see that we could actually build this up and start kind of retopoing the parts that we want to retopo, right? Of course, this area is a little bit kind of wonky, so I can go to 2 for edge mode, W for move. Remember, you can always go back to Q to do tweaks, right? So if I want to kind of tweak some of these a little more, I can manually. And then, of course, I can do Alt-C loop cut, W for move, middle mouse button. And you see how you can kind of do some nice little, go back to Q for tweak. And this is one of the reasons why I didn't add too many following, because that's working well. I need more localized control for that. So now you can see what's going on here is we've kind of started that up. Kind of got those set up the way we want to be. And what we can actually do now, save that really quick. I'll go to 4 for object mode. And you'll see that there is the retopo mesh already here. Oh my god, that's really getting annoying. And what I could do is I could select the other body and then shift click this one. And if we right click, we could join. And you'll see they're now under retopo mesh with all of the proper settings, right? And if I go into 3, there it is. See how it's going to use quad bodies still? And you could still come in and do your normal kind of D for select, but you now have them kind of joined together, right? So now you can keep modeling, you keep doing stuff. Like, see if I hit D for annotate, I could still come in here and I could say, hey, I want to add a little more there, right? This would probably be easy enough to extrude, but I just want to show this, right? And of course, I can hit Q to go back to selection tool, 1 for vertices. And then if I grab those guys, I could do my shortest path, add B surface. You see how it adds it? So you see how that all still works. So what I do is I eventually kind of start off kind of making a whole new one. So this is all started and set up properly, right? And then what I do is I join the kind of dismantled one that I deleted some stuff on to the retopo mesh. So I select the one where we deleted some faces first, then retopo mesh second, so it joins to the retopo mesh. And then you see everything's kind of already all set up for us, and we have our retopologizing started up. All right, that'll probably be a great place to stop recording that.